So before we start the talk, I thought let's just start off with a kind of a prayer. This is Samtikaram. It's not very legible, but don't worry. And you just sort of get into the mood of very peaceful surrounding. It's generally recited during Pratikaman. It's adoring Santinath Bhagwan. And the prayer has got lots of Devis Nama, attendant deities of the Tirthankar. So it will just take about 2-3 minutes. So if you just close your eyes or just listen to the prayer, and we'll just recite the Santikaram. So, Santikaram, Santichinam, Jagasaranam, Jaya Sri Dayaram, Samarami Patapalaka, Nippani Garudakayase. Om Sanamo Vipposai Pattanam Santi Samipayanam Jom Swaha Mantenam Savasivaduriyaranam Om Santim Namo Karo Khelo Sai Mailati Pattanam Som Rim Namo Sapo Sai Pattanam Chade Sirin Vani Tiruvana Samini Siri Devi Chakraya Gani Pidaga Gahati Sipada Surinda Sayavirakantu Jinapate Rakhantu Mamaroini Panditi Vajasinkalaya Vajan Kusi Chakesari Naradata Kali Mahakali Gaurita Gandhari Mahachwala Manavya Veiruta Achupta Manasi Mamanasya Devyo Chakkaho Mahachakati Mojakhe Sumo Mayanga Vijaya Bambo Manu Surkumaru Chammo Apayala Kinnar Garudo Gantapataya Jakindo Uparvarna Vyudigo Myo Pasmayanga Devi Uchake Srajya Duryari Kalima Kali Vachko Santa Jala Suttaraya Susri Vacha Chanda Vijay Kusi Panniti Nippani Achu Adarani Vairuta Chutakandhari Ambapoma Visita Yatithara Kanarayane Visura Surya Chuavyantar Jirpama Kodanturakam Sayamaham Evam Suriti Suragana Sahiyo Sangasandijan Chando Madhyavikari Murakamuni Sundara Suridhamema Yasantina Samarithi Rakam Sariti Kalam Jo Sabbo Vadavariyo Salai Suasampayam Paramam. Alright, so the topic now is, I think it's going to chapter 7 of the text that we're discussing, and the topic is going to be the mendicant path and the attainment of goal. Any idea what does mendicant mean? Okay, take out your phones and why don't you look at Google and type in etymology of mendicant. So if you just type etymology, which means where does the root of word mendicant come from? So if you just type etymology and mendicant, then that will give you how does the word actually be derived from. Anyone? It's etymology, E-T-Y-M-O-L-O-G-Y, etymology of mendicant. Sorry?
Like reduced to begging.
Yeah, reduced to begging. Okay, so actually, I don't know, because when I type into Google, it actually comes with the Latin word mendicus. Mendicus. So mendicus actually means begging, and so therefore a mendicant means beggars. So does it really seem to be the right class, like beggars? What does it refer to?
When you go to ask for food, maybe? As sadhus and sadhus.
Okay, so as sadhus and sadhus. So right, so this is referring to monks and nuns, the path followed by the monks and nuns, and the attainment of goal. And why does someone actually become a sadhu and a sadhvi? See, this whole chapter is going to be discussing about our monks and nuns. Now, interestingly, after there is sadhu, sadhvi ke, there are actually quite a few words which describes our monks and nuns. So, like we say sadhu, sadhvi. Then there is muni, Then there's another word which is shraman. So apna sadhus ne shraman ke. The other one which comes in the script is nigrant, so without any notes. So sadhu, there's another word which is called nigrant. And there's also another word which is called bhikshu. Sadhu, bhikshu, big mage. So these are all different words actually describing our monks and nuns. So this whole chapter, and I think there are going to be 3 sessions which I'll be taking over. So these 3 chapters is all going to be describing about the monks and the nuns. Now, before we start the topic, what's common into all of these pictures here? Determination, yeah. So I think you're in the right path. So essentially, if you look at, anyone knows this on the bottom left, what is this program? SAS. Who Dares Wins. I mean, I've watched a couple of programs. The language is a bit rough, but if you set aside the language, then the message which it conveys is absolutely amazing. Okay, these are the people who don't join the police, they're not joining the army, these are the special forces. And what determination these people have, the training is way beyond even the kind of what the army people will go through. And many people, they're going through extreme climates, extreme temperatures, and it actually gives you the sense of how much a human body can achieve. That if you've got the determination, that what actually, if it's actually mind over matter. It's kind of amazing as to how they actually manage to get these things. So these are, every country would have their special forces. Israel, every country, American, the SEALs. So these are the people who go for this kind of training. If you look at some people who've been struck with disasters, and to see that with a kind of handicapped body, and to go through Parallel Olympics and how they managed to get through those, it's absolute determination. Usain Bolt, sort of people want to run, but they're fastest man in the world. People climbing Everest. Sadly, if you read the news today, a couple of people died climbing Mount Everest. Actually, there is a traffic jam on the way climbing to the Everest. So literally, it almost seems like M25 motorway. People are just waiting to get their turn because Nepal has actually issued, I think, 400 permits. So people are just climbing Mount Everest. But you can imagine that people are so dedicated that the cost of their life, they really want to sort of scale the heights. Here, kind of the financial markets, trading floor. I mean, giving my own example here, when I started my career in banking, we had to get to work at 7 in the morning, work till about 1 o'clock at night. The company gives you a taxi to go home. The kids are crying, so you wake up at 3 o'clock because they don't sleep, they are colicky. Again, wake up at 6 in the morning, go to the bank, and you sort of sacrifice your sleep, you sacrifice your diet, you sacrifice family, everything with a view of hopefully becoming a millionaire. So and if you actually ask anyone right now, or most people, what do you want to do? Yes, I wanted to get a job, I want to do this, but most people right now in this capitalistic society, what do people want to really do? They just want to become overnight, not even millionaires, but billionaires. That's people's ultimate goal. So that brings a question, then what does this kind of relate to? So then, what is that to do with this topic which you're talking about, the sadhus and sadhvis? Essentially, the idea is that we are all sort of normal lay people, but is there a need that for us to actually then get towards that level of monks and nuns, or aspire to? We might not even we might not become sadhus sadhvis in this lifetime, but is that something which people who become sadhus and sadhvis, actually people like you and me, they are staying in normal families, and certain things happens, and they then decide to say, I actually want to follow this path. They very well know that the path is not easy. It's a very challenging task. And in fact, many times, the family members actually discourage whoever is a son, daughter, brother, saying, are you sure you actually want to follow this path? Because the path is not easy. So it's actually the culmination of absolute determination if someone wants to become a monk and a nun. Now, again, bringing the same example, okay, why discuss this topic in front of you? Sometimes when I was wondering that what's the relevance of me discussing this topic to you? Because for example, then what's the point of me discussing this? It's like, for example, saying, okay, let me give you a medical talk right now. But you'd say, I don't want to become a doctor. So what's the point of me sitting here, wasting my 1 hour and listening to you because I don't want to become a medical doctor? Same thing happened to me. So for example, when I was working in the banking sector, every Monday, colleagues would come in. oh, what did you do over the weekend? And they'll say, somebody will say, oh yeah, we went to this pub here, we went to this restaurant here, we ate this food, this was absolute great non-veg place here. I mean, wine, we spent this 2,000 pound wine on my PC. And I'm thinking to myself, none of this actually concerns me. I've got no interest in these restaurants here, I've got no interest in this wine. So why do you want to participate in those topics? I could not even contribute to those topics. And he actually feels it's a wasted thing. So that brings it, what's your objective of why do you think that we want to discuss this? What do you think I want to bring out discussing this topic between you about the monks and nuns? What's the relevance?
I think it's the qualities which you can apply to your own life. It's like about determination. So you
Yeah.
don't have to be like, for instance, like writing. They have got the determination. They have chosen that
Yeah.
hard path. So similarly in your life, when you come through hardships and stuff. And
Yeah.
If it's all about.
Yeah, I totally agree. So that's one part. Anything else?
It's quite an integral part of Jainism, isn't it? Because within Jainism, we have the laity,
Yeah.
and we have this other section which is very important. So we must
So-
know that.
I think that's quite true, but I think what tends to happen is if you look at most of these stems of spirituality, this is not like an academic thing. So like, let me learn about, because it's an integral part of Jainism. The whole idea is, as you mentioned, is how can I imbibe some of those things within ourselves? Because otherwise it becomes like a theoretical discussion. So you or I might not become sadhus and sadhvis, but
But there would be someone that we aspire to, right? Be somebody, they would be like the leading lights.
yes. Yeah, so,
We would look up to someone like we've got Shilapa coming.
yes,
The
right.
reason we'll go and listen to her is because we want to
Yeah, so
be
yeah,
a little bit
yeah.
closer to that message, right?
Exactly true. So, yeah, so I think that there's one kind of respect, and for them, so that they've actually gone through the sort of really hard, they've dedicated life for this, and then let's imbibe pearls of spirituality from them. So I think you're right. So to me, the objective is two things. One, there should be awe, and the second should be aspiration. So awe, essentially, what I mean by awe, let's just see. Let's just say, for example, we had this SVP charity dinner. Our dinner table per hoy, can you just imagine if you actually had all groups of leaders sitting in front of your dinner table? You had Obama there, obviously, let's not miss out Narendra Modi with his latest win. So if there was a table here, can you just imagine, you literally just feel for a moment, okay, here you're having a dinner, and all these people are here, and you're sitting right in front of them. Wouldn't you be in awe? You'll actually take selfies, you'll send those photographs to all your family members. You'll actually, if you have a picture, you'll actually frame it at home, that you were sitting amongst a group of all these leaders here. You get Putin there, you get everyone there. Let's listen to Theresa May. So she's not at the dinner table, but everyone else is there, and you've got this awe and inspiration. Or on the same hand, if you look at all these billionaires, if you were literally had an opportunity, I mean, I recently went for a G2 meeting, Jain International, and they actually invite a lot of eminent speakers. So at that time, they actually invited Lakshmi Mittal, Hinduja, and you could see the buzz around. Like if you actually even managed to shake hands or take a photograph with these people, you would actually, wow, I actually managed to take a photo with someone who's a billionaire in front of us. And most of the people here around, it's like, it's amazing buzz around. Like if the whole dynamics changes, if you had such eminent people here. If there's young people here, you'll have film stars, if you manage to sit with all these film stars. And so in our day-to-day life, we get inspired by this. And the idea is that, or actually what I would like to suggest is, there should also be equal amount of awe to say that, yes, there's actually a congregation of some spiritual leaders, and do we have that same amount of awe with them? We might not become like sadhus and sadhvis, or we might not say that, but the fact that they have actually managed to do that, it should be a source of inspiration. It's not just like, you're just there. So it's one thing, it's just the awe. And you can only have awe if you really appreciate the qualities which they've gone through, then you get that sense of awe. The other thing is aspiration. And I think that's quite interesting, that aspiration means that maybe in this lifetime right now, we might not say, okay, I want to become a sadhu or sadhvi. But the idea is that maybe it's a good path to follow. Maybe I won't achieve it in this birth right now, maybe in future lives, but that has to be the goal, rather than saying, it's useless, what do sadhu sadhvis do? And one of the worst things which we can do is actually criticize them. criticize monks and nuns, because monks and nuns are humans after all, and they might actually even have some flaws within them. They might have anger, they might have slight subtle greed, but the amount of things which they do is far superior and above to many of the things which we do. So we aspire for them, but we then negate some of the negatives which might they have, because we also have got negatives, but we don't look at ourselves. So that's one thing. Aspiration has to be there. We acknowledge that some of them might have some flaws, but that's fine. I mean, they are, after all, humans. They are still striving towards the path of perfection. So yeah, so the idea is, it's not a bad thought for all of us to say, one day I would like to become like them, and that's a good thought to have. So what's the relevance of this chapter and talk? Okay, so let me give you my own personal example. So like when I'm booking for holidays, rather than looking at the location or anything else, one of the first things I would do is hotels my bathrooms ke viche. So if the bathrooms and everything are clean, then I'll say, okay, let's book this hotel right now. But on the other hand, when I was young, my grandparents used to take me from Kenya to India almost on every year. Chalo jatra karwa jaye. And if you have been to the jatra places, and every year they would say the different sections. One year let's go to South India, Bangalore. One day let's go to Rajasthan. One year let's go to Rajasthan. So every year we used to go to different jatra places. Now at this time I used to hate going to jatra places, because if you've looked at those dharamshalas, the toilets and everything are absolutely despicable. You would not be able to go into any of those toilets right now. And my grandfather used to then tell me, have you come for the jatra, or have you come here just because these bathrooms are putting you off? And he would say, okay, let me clean up this. So as you can see, there was a change of perspective. There was a slight change of perspective, saying, fine, there's a little bit of dirt and filth, but if you don't focus on it, that's fine. That doesn't make a big difference. You've come for a bigger purpose, a bigger objective. So if you focus on that, that's actually a little bit more important. So I think, as you're rightly saying, the one thing is that sometimes we go from zero tolerance, and the idea is, by looking at the lives of these monks and nuns, we try to strive towards getting towards 100% tolerance. Let me give another example, again, sort of quite a few family examples. I was told by my grandmother, one of my grandfather's brother, and if the food was not proper, he used to sit there and just throw the plate away. Literally, and literally just that anger saying, don't try that now, because right now, if you try that, Chirag, you'll be thrown out of the house. So, but can you imagine that was true? If people are, so zero tolerance, and then you actually look at our sadhus and sadhus with a begging bowl, and literally saying, they'll go to different people's houses, say, whatever is given to me, in whatever quantities, I'll just take that. There's different sections. They'll actually mix everything together. Dal, bhat, rotli, shak, everything in a single pot, and they'll just eat whatever is served to them. So when you then have that, you'll say that you start thinking that from zero tolerance, as you rightly said, you're actually then trying to get towards that 100% tolerance. Yes, I'll be able to tolerate many things, inconveniences, I'll try to get to that. So by looking at their lives, we actually sort of get really stimulated, and sort of we start to strive towards that. Contentment. You know, all of us, including all of us, even me, so when if you look at our sadhus and sadhus, what do they have? Possessions. And then patra on a bowl. And you can see, can't you feel content? And this is very, very sort of important in this day and age, when all this materialistic society, everything is based on growth and consumptions. If you look at, and it sometimes makes us feel that with this kind of ideologies, we're actually against the current, what's going on in the society right now. Everyone wants something more, something new. And sort of if you emulate the lives of our monks and nuns, you get self-contentment. And the other thing is generosity. It's a general tendency for most of us to hold things. Let me save for rainy, let me keep things for myself. And the more you look at their life, they've literally given up everything, and they're just totally generous. So I think these are some of the practical. Anything else you can add to the list? Yeah, so I think essentially all what I wanted to convey was, sometimes it actually feels like, when I was actually preparing for the lecture, because it really describes the life of a monk in so much detail, and sometimes you actually, I was thinking that if I was sitting in the audience place, I said, why do I want to know about all these things? What relevance is it? And I was really trying to think that I think it is really important, and it's really nice to know about their life. Now let me give you my own personal, again, another personal reflection. I mean, I was told that when my mom was pregnant with me, so she must have been 6 or 7 months pregnant, she actually went to, obviously she was in Kenya, so she actually went to Palitana and Samechika for Jatra. So even quite heavily pregnant, and a lot of the people were quite surprised that at such a sort of late stage of pregnancy, you went for a Jatra. And it so happened that one of the best dreams I can even remember to this day was maybe when I was 4 or 5 years old. I literally dreamt the whole night that Palitana mein jo gaya ho, if you've been to Jatra in Palitana, generally what tends to happen is you wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning, you want to get ready, so before the sun really rises up, you actually want to start your descent going up. And then if you reach there early, then you even get a chance to do puja. Puja karvi hoy, so you actually want to get there quite early. Pakshal start thai, Bhagwan ne navadavanu hoy, and all this ceremony start. So you generally would wake up quite early. You would start the climb, and you would try to get to the top of the mountain by about sort of 7:30, 8 o'clock. So in that dream, I'm actually sort of woke up quite early, starting to climb the mountain. As I'm climbing the mountain, what tends to happen is that Sadhu Maharaj Lok, they actually started much earlier on. So they start probably the Jatra, it's 4 o'clock in the morning. And by the time we were starting, at least in the dream, by the time I was starting to climb the mountain, the sadhus were actually coming down. And some of them, it's a very nice scene. Some of the younger sadhus, even if you go there right now, sadhus who are like 12, 14, 15, 20-year-olds, they actually have racing. They're actually with their sticks, they're actually racing down the mountain with their other sadhus. And it's quite an amazing sight to see that, they've just been to the Jatra and they're kind of running down the mountains. And I could and every time a sadhu comes down, I'm actually bowing down and then just falling at their feet. And so by the time I actually reached the top of the mountain, I was absolutely tired because I've just now exhausted myself bowing down to every single sadhu who is actually coming down. So it actually just shows that if you actually had this kind of, I actually feel very, very strongly that whatever sanskars are imparted when you're quite young or even during pregnancy, those instincts really persist quite a lot. In fact, I might ask you another thing. If you go into Google, if you just type into Google and just see, if you just type in baby's music in womb, what do you get? Just type this thing. What's the first entry which comes up if you just type baby's music in womb? Is an article by NHS?
It says, I've got something different, but it says music might soothe baby's soul.
Okay, but okay.
Even before birth.
Okay, but is there any other hits which come with NHS, like .nhs? Okay, maybe when you go home, you check. I think if you actually check in Google, yeah, there is a one.
Music might soothe baby's soul.
Yeah, and that's an NHS. It's an NHS site, right?
No.
No, it says
The NHS one says something different.
babies may remember music.
Yeah. That's right. So that's an NHS site. So in a way that's quite interesting because many times when you type certain things, you get this fake news. But when I read this article, it's an NHS website, they're actually NHS is now agreeing to the fact that there's some researchers, I think in some Scandinavian countries, if you read that article, I think somewhere in Finland or Norway, that they've done this research, whatever babies is actually, music is babies listen to the music in the womb, they actually retain. In fact, I even read an article, there was one lady who was listening to ABBA music while she was pregnant. And by the time that girl was, the baby daughter, when she was born, she was probably 2 or 3 years old, she was fluent, she knew all the ABBA songs. So that kind of sanskars and everything are so important that they actually, and it's kind of amazing to see how many of these principles of our Jain principles are actually coming up to the forefront. So for example, Aprama sanskar geche. So now NHS is actually, attesting to the same fact. If you look at Aprama to Chovyar karwanu ke and pachi Naukarshi karwanu ke, and now one of the biggest fad right now is intermittent fasting. So that's actually now something. So all the medical sciences, and if you look at it, there's such a strong voice. If you want to lose weight, if you want to improve your health, then intermittent fasting is something which in vogue right now. So if you think of it, it's like, wow, this was done by our ancestors in our scriptures for so long. So many times it seems that they're catching up to what's already been advocated in our scriptures. So now this one thing which begs the question right now is, okay, look, all of us are sitting here and all of us have got some sense of spirituality. So like many of us, we do our Samayik program, we do our spirituality करे छे, એવું નથી કે સાધુ સાધ્વીસ જ કરી શકે છે. One can ask the question, do I really have to become a monk and nun? We do lots of good things. So we do pratikaman, we do Samayik, you know, we do charity. So you know, if you look at this, some of these Jains and many other people are doing amazing amount of charitable activities. You know, આપણે જાત્રા કરીએ છીએ, we doing ambel ને તપ કરીએ છીએ. So what is then the difference between us and sadhus will be doing the same thing. Sadhus will be going for jatras, sadhus will be doing pratikaman. So then what's the difference between us and them? Why do I have to become a monk? આપણે આ બધું કરી જ શકતા હોય, if you can do all these things, then what would aspire me to become a monk or a nun?
The attachment. You're probably not attached to things, whereas if we carry on the way we are, we still remain attached to family, society, and so on.
And what does that lead to? So that attachment then leads to?
All your
Yeah. Yeah, okay, yeah, so that's right. So yeah, because you're attached, then you cannot follow some of these things to a very strong extent. Yeah.
Also, they've taken a vow, so even if they falter, they go back to that path and try to.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
We might not.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So that's very true. So I think as rightly said, so one thing which I felt was that it's a degree of observance. આપણે પણ કરીએ છીએ, લોકો કરે છે. So for example, when you do Samayik, we'll say that's the kind of symbolic significance of Samayik is, I'm going to behave like a monk or a nun for 48 minutes. So we are actually, during the time of Samayik, there is no difference between us and a monk and nun. So that is the aim of doing a Samayik for 48 minutes. Okay, there should be absolutely no difference. Okay, sadhu, you have totally detached yourself from all external activities. You're in a quiet place. You're contemplating. You're in a state of meditation, or you're sort of counting a rosary. You're doing whatever activities you want to do. So in that 48 minutes, you are almost like a sadhu or a sadhu or a monk. So for us, it's for a very short duration. Whereas for a monk, they've taken it for lifelong. Many of these things which we try to do, I want to follow non-violence. I want to follow a sort of aparigraha. We might sort of, as you know, one of these surveys, you have all this scale of 0 to 10. So we might be striving towards that 4, 5, 6, and whereas sadhus and sadhus are really going towards that 8, 9, 10 level. So that's really kind of the biggest difference right now. And as you rightly said, Nisha, because of other attachments, we really can't go ourselves to the 7. You know, I really want to meditate for so many hours, but yes, I've got other duties, I've got family duties, I've got other things to do, so I can't go to the level of 8 or 9. I really have to limit myself to that level of 3 or 4 because of other attachments. So if you then say I want to detach myself, so then I can start devoting more time towards other things. So I think that's one level of the degree of observance. Now, one thing is that if someone wants to become a monk or a nun, one of the first things they need to do is read some of the agams, the scriptures. And it's sort of interesting to know what would actually motivate someone to actually become a monk or a nun. And sometimes it is believed that especially some of the young kids who actually take Diksha, we believe that it's because of their past sanskars. That how does an 8-year-old kid know that I want to become a monk or a nun? It has to come from the past life, that they put that strong desire. But older people, then they actually really think quite hard. And it's quite amazing to see that even this day and age, when we've got this internet, we've got all these modern utilities, and especially in India right now, it has also become as advanced as any other Western countries, that you would have teenagers or people in their early 20s deciding to renounce, because that's a time when people have got lots of energy, lots of fervor, they want to enjoy life, and then someone to say that I really want to follow this hard path of renunciation, that's quite intriguing and quite amazing to see. And if you then see that why would someone actually follow this path here, then the Acharan Sutra, which is the first agam, that's the first agam, and if you look at the chapter 1, people then start having a very strong conviction about the certain facets, because many of us are quite confused. What is life about? Many people sort of, even before they start on the path of spirituality, Atma che ke nathi, is there soul or is there no soul? So by reading or by coming in contact with sort of pious souls, you first then understand the existence of soul. Okay, yes, there's something which is a soul. There is pre-birth, there is rebirth. Then you understand, so when they're reading all these things, and if that sort of sticks very close to your heart, then you actually start feeling that, yes, there's something more to this. Then there is doctrine of soul, there's cause of influx of karma. Why do things happen? Why does sorrow happen? Like the kind of questions Gautam Buddha asked. Okay, why does it happen? Then you get into this concept of karma. Then how can I stop the influx of karma? And then the second section goes into ignorance, and then it also describes, Acharang Sutra is the only sutra which we believe, which actually describes concept of soul in other living beings. No other philosophy actually discusses it, but Acharang Sutra actually goes to great extent to say, there's a soul in earth-bodied beings, plant-bodied beings, air-bodied beings, fire-bodied beings. All of these single-sensed beings actually got a concept of soul. So it goes to that kind of minute level. And so the question is that, so when people have got this strong conviction, they understand this, then that actually, I believe that makes them feel that I really want to follow this path. So it really depends on people who are really want to follow this path, then they get absolutely convinced, okay, this is the way, path to follow. In fact, I'll discuss this in the other slide. But the other concept here was that one of the greatest aphorisms of the Acharang Sutra is that our life is like a leaf. Any moment, the leaf will just literally fall down. So that's a very common aphorism which comes in Acharang Sutra, that, oh man, our life is just like this leaf. One day it's just going to wither away. So we will just, once they just sort of go wither away like the leaf, so do the most whilst you've got the life. And that kind of is really the essence of someone says, okay, the concept when I was young, I heard very often, spirituality karsu. We will follow the path of religion when we got old. Young age is the day of khai pine maja karo. But we all see in our day-to-day life that there's no guarantee of life. Young babies, young children, people in the 20s, 30s, anyone can go at any time. And so therefore, and when people, when this really comes to heart, then they put that strong conviction, I want to do something about my life, and then they actually follow this path of renunciation. And I think this is quite important to note, because many of us have been to pratnas. Every time we go to pratna thai, we always go to pratnas, we always listen to the same song, and it almost becomes like a monotonous song. But I think it's quite essence to say that even if you imbibe some of the principles, actually it's quite important to see that this is it's reality, it's not just myth. Now, again, the same Acharang Sutra, it actually discusses it in so much detail. For example, when it discusses plant-bodied beings, it says that earth-bodied, water-bodied, fire-bodied, and plant-bodied beings are immobile beings. Then air, and air is actually, it can move, air. So those are mobile beings. And it gives descriptions of many things. Then it also describes so much in detail, how can different beings be born. So there's people, souls can be born through a womb. It can be born like invertebrate, vertebrate, or it could be spontaneously born like in heavens and hells. So it gives details of all this kind of different ways of being born. Then it also describes as a plant-bodied beings. That it says that body is long in size. Plant-bodied beings get repeatedly born in the same body for a long time. So plant-bodied hoy, so they've got one body, but sometimes a soul can get born in the same body so many times. And weapons that destroy, for example, fire beings, scissors, hand, homogeneous weapons, heterogeneous weapons. So it goes through all these details. So Acharang Sutra describes all these different life forms, and it describes how can they be sort of harmed. And it actually convinces you that yes, there is life in them. And also it also then gives you some description. Look at our human body and the plant body. We are subject to birth, so is the plant body. We are subject to grow, even the plant grows. We are endowed with consciousness, so is the plant body endowed with consciousness. We wither, we become old, so does even a plant become old. We need nutrition, plant needs nutrition. We are impermanent, plant is impermanent. We are subject to metabolism, plants are subject to metabolism, all the chemical processes in it. We are subject to change, plant bodies are subject to change. And it really then convinces the reader that and that's why it says all souls are equal. Jainism does not believe in this hierarchy. So for example, in many of the Christian faith, they say that, oh yeah, humans are the most superior forms of all beings. We've got the right over all these other forms. Jainism says that there's no difference between our soul and the soul of an ant or an elephant. So all souls are equal. We could be born in a different body, but the souls, at the level of soul, there's no distinction between us and any other souls. Then it also warns the monks and nuns who want to follow this path. It says, please be careful if you want to follow this path. Self-restrained monks should be ashamed of their activities. So if you have become a monk, you should be really ashamed. And you then are trying to show off to the people that I'm a homeless mendicant. You're showing to the world, oh yes, I've become a sadhu, and you're going to a different place. But if you indulge in violence to water-bodied beings, if you're not careful, then you're just doing a pretend show. So your level of the way you follow this has to be in so detailed. So it actually tells them you need to understand all these things, and therefore your dedication of how you follow these vows should be to the best possible way, mourners. Don't just, there's no show, there's no pretense to anyone. And then it's called the word parigna. So parigna means knowledge. It's like it even comes in the Buddhist scripts. And what it means, you understand through knowledge. So for you to know about the aspects of reality, how can you know about the reality? First is knowledge. The second thing they ask is, analytical knowledge. Some of the things, if you discuss about our soul, we cannot see things, but it's through analytic. For example, we actually stay in this day and age of everything is wireless. It's amazing to see remote control carriages, so many things are wireless. We cannot see things, but we can analyze the effects of it. And therefore we then believe in these things. So, for example, soul no one knows. No one can see the soul. No one can touch, feel, smell, anything, the soul. Then how would you understand these things? Through analytical process, through your mind and through your analytical process. So one is knowledge, one is through analytical process, and the other way is through knowledge that dispels kind of craving. So he says you should have that knowledge which you know, because they are also humans, they also have got craving. So you get that enough knowledge in your mind that you can subjugate that craving which you have. Now, one thing is, what's the difference between us and many other monks? So one of the examples which I was giving is like the monks, our monks follow is to such level of rigorous, even if you compare to any other monks. And one simple example is, traditionally our monks and nuns have always gone on foot, and that's why they've never traveled overseas. So no matter where they travel from point A to point B, the monks and nuns will always go on foot. They will not, and Khali Loka 3 mahina, they do not travel, and that's during the rainy monsoon season. So those kind of 3 or 4 months, they'll stay in one place, and because there's a lot of rain and they don't want to travel. Rest of the time, they are in a constant state of always constantly moving. They don't get attached to a place, and they're constantly moving. Okay, recently we do acknowledge that some of the monks right now do travel, so like Srila Piji Maharaj and all that, and they in a way have taken a much more holistic view that for the greater good of mankind. So it's their interpretation of traveling should not limit us. We are actually doing much greater good by traveling than sort of following this vow here. But traditionally, probably 99% of all the monks would be following them. If you look at any other monks, they are quite liberal in their attitude. Many monks of other faiths, Christian faiths, they're bishops, they get married, they're husband wives. It's so how they follow it is to very, very strict discipline, and it's very, very rigorous for form. Now, I think there's no one here who actually came for the Diksha Mate. So in 2011, we actually went for the Diksha ceremony of Sanghamitra. So she is one of the disciples of our Acharya Channaji. And at that time, we actually asked her, when she was taking Diksha, she had a teenage girl at that time. And when we were sitting with her, we asked her, Sanghamitraji, what's compelling you to take Diksha? And she came from States, so she was in India, but then she went to, she settled in the States, and she was in the States for many years, and she had a teenage daughter, and she was going to take Diksha. And it was kind of amazing to ask her, what compels you, why couldn't you have waited a little bit longer? So, and she said, can you please describe to us what's the motivation of you taking Diksha? And that time she says, look, yes, I've got a teenage daughter. My teenage daughter is 14, 15 years old, and she told me, Mom, I know that you really have got a strong desire to take Diksha. In 2 or 3 years' time, I'll go to college, I'll be very independent, and then, the way American life is, most of the time parents stay separately and the kids are away. So I'll have my own independent life. So you're only going to be there for 2-3 years for me. But I understand that you actually want to take Diksha, and so why do you want to stop yourself just for me? That I love you as a mother, and I know you love me, but I know that this is a very strong part, that it's really, you want to do it. So don't hold back because of me. He says, I've got dad, you've got the whole family supporting me. So if this is your desire, why don't you go? And then what Sanghamitra says, and she said, yes, to me, I had one daughter. But when I became a sadhvi, everyone became my daughter. So that's the real motivation of me becoming a sadhvi. When we become a sadhu and sadhvi, the whole community becomes like our brothers and sisters. When we are like in our own families, it's like my son, my brother, my father, my sister. It's very small. But when you then become a sadhu, then your level of compassion, it just becomes universal, unlimited. There's no distinction. If I see my daughter or if I see someone else's, to me they're the same. And it's that leap of faith which then makes me to becoming a sadhvi. So that was quite amazing. Right.
And what she sacrificed. I
Yeah.
understand.
Yeah.
Actually, what the daughter has said.
Yeah.
Is,
In a way, I tend to agree with you. So, in fact, this kind of discussions also occurs very much so even in our own household, like when Bharati and I are. Anyone who wants to do spirituality, it does not always take one party. So, or if I want to do certain things like Pajushanaveche, that means that in our society, the other members who are actually then serving you, or ambel kareche, so even when you go to doing ambel, we're doing ambel, but Vinod Bhai says ladies start at 7 o'clock in the morning and they're cooking food for everyone else. So anyone who wants to do spirituality, and that's even if you listen to Acharya Channaji, there are always two parties to it. And so if you look at it from the daughter's perspective, yes, she has also had a very generous heart, and in one way, she'll get her own karma. So in one way, she has not obstructive antray karma. You actually stop someone. She's actually been a very matured girl for a teenager to say that, yes, mom, is this something that you want to do? Please go ahead and do it.
For that to come from a 14-year-old is incredible, I think, to be able to give it up like that.
But I think it's a fortunate thing. It's a two-way thing, and I think if you look through the scriptures, many times it's very rare that anyone who wants to take this path, there's always resistance. There's always going to be resistance, because people are so attached to their family members that it's very rare for someone to say wholeheartedly. And as we'll come later on, there are certain criteria and conditions which the person who wants to become a sadhu or a sadhvi have to follow before even the guru actually accepts them also. But there's no doubt about it that not only her daughter, but family, everyone, and you actually feel that they are actually quite blessed. That even for the daughter to have that, because if the daughter was, if she was a very clingy and if she didn't, then Sanghamitra might have to wait for a few more years.
That's why I have my selfie with.
Huh?
I have a selfie with
Sanghamitra, yeah. What's the time? Is it how many? 9. Just a few more slides. I think one of the points which was mentioned earlier on, if you look at ourselves, we stay in a society, and by staying in a society, we've got rules. So, for example, speeding limit. So we all have our sort of say, okay, we've got speeding rules, and I sometimes actually feel that probably 90 or 95% of everyone who is staying in this country can actually says we are flaunting the rules. Like for example, have you driven in a 20-mile zone? Can you actually drive 20 miles? You just can't. So almost every one of us are actually breaking rules because we, and not inadvertently, but even genuinely, if it's 30, I mean, I never drive at 30. Most of us don't drive at 30. You do 33, 34, 35. Knowing the limit, what limit will I not sort of, if someone catches me, you'll just push to the boundaries. So you will, there are rules set, but we'll break the rules. Because there are rules set by the society. I don't tend to agree with these rules. These rules are not good for me. Look at the tax. Most of us will say, आपने tax નું છે, expenses क्या ચાલે છે, અમુક expenses અમુક allowed છે તો ઠીક છે, ના allowed એ નાખી દો એક સાથે જતા રહેશે expenses. So you are actually saying that whoever is self-employed people, we will actually, most of us, there will be exceptions, will say no, it doesn't matter what it is, I just really want to fight. But most of us in the society will actually then say, let's break the rules. The rules have been set, and you'll say that, I just don't want to follow these rules, or I'll actually bend it. Like, for example, my grandfather and eldest brother, he had a very simple rule. I will not cheat anyone else, but to the government, I've got no qualms cheating the government. So tax for his rules are very simple. If I'm doing any trading, I will not cheat any single person. That's my rule. But for government, I'll cheat them wholeheartedly. I've got no qualms about evading any kinds of taxes and all that. So that was the simple rule. I feel nothing at all if I were to evade taxes or not pay taxes to the government. So that was his criteria. I mean, he was in Africa, so obviously he had his days. But that's kind of stuff. Now, there's a big difference here. Okay, these are rules set from the outside. But I don't know how many of you, many of us I know, position, how many of you sort of follow some rules? Okay, position to position, I'm going to give up something. You do that, right? So you'd say I want to give up something from position to position, from one birthday to the other birthday. Anyone else? Okay, so many people actually then tend to do that. And if you see this, okay, do you find it's easier to follow those rules rather than saying whatever rule you've taken, even if you have some temptation, whether it's food or anything else, once when that's set in your mind, I've taken that rule myself, no one has imposed it on you, and therefore to follow that rule, you've got no qualms.
Agreed.
So that actually just shows that when they actually want to take that, follow the path of diksha, if it's forced upon them, they'll not be able to sustain through that. So this conviction should come from internally inside. And when the conviction comes from yourself, then there's no question about flaunting the rules. Because it's come from yourself. Badna rules, but they just want to follow the rules themselves. So for example, even like taking one example, I stopped eating underground roots since I was 4 years old. So when I go to work, people absolutely get amazed to say, well, first of all, you follow a Jain diet, you're now trying to become a vegan, you don't drink, you don't smoke, what do you eat? How do you enjoy life? They get really surprised. But for us, nothing. Potato and chips, it will not make any difference to me. And some people say, oh, really? Potatoes doesn't affect? Because it's come from internally. If it was a rule given to me from the outside, then it's like, oh no, how can I resist chips? It's one of the most favorite foods. So the question is that when people want to follow the path of monkhood or nunhood, the rules are coming from internally. It's that internal conviction, and therefore following them, it does not make it makes it much more easier. I think that's basically it. I mean, there are more slides coming through, but I left because there are 3 lectures, so we'll continue after. Anything else? Any points of questions or anything to discuss?
Do we have to become, at some point in our life cycle, a monk or a nun to attain?
Okay. So you're taking me to my almost the penultimate slide, but the short answer is, and it's quite amazing to know, so Namo Siddhanam is essentially souls who have gone to moksha. And when I show that slide, it's amazing to note, and even after Amuk prayers ma Sarva Mangal Mangalyam Sarvakalyam Karan Pradhanam Sarvadharmanam Jainam Jeti Sasanam. Jainam is the prime religion. And it's kind of amazing to see that who can become Namo Siddhanam. And it says, yes, sadhus and sadhus can become that. Even people who do not take sadhus, like people like us, if you're following certain things to a very karma kapao is following the life like the scriptures say, you can become, so you don't have to necessarily become a sadhus and sadhvis, you can do it here. Someone from another faith can actually become. So there are about 10 or 15 categories of different kinds of people who can actually become namosiddhanam. So they can get to our moksha, not necessarily following the path of sadhus, sadhvis or all that. So it's kind of sobering to know. But basically what happens is it becomes an easier path. For becoming a sadhus and sadhvis, it's like your whole time dedication, you're just following that. So that path becomes much easier for us right now. We have got jealousies, we've got other things, we've got a lot of flow. So it becomes more difficult from our side of the camp than their side of the camp, because for them, as Nisha said, attachment chhodi didu che, and they're following this day in, day out. Whereas we are just doing it in a very limited manner, but that does not stop from Bhagwan Mahavirna, one of his biggest Shravaks was Anand Shravak. And it's amazing that if you look at the stories, he was a very rich merchant, had lots of land and cows and everything, and yet his level of detachment was just amazing. He wrote Samay Kare, and in spite of all the wealth he had got, he was not attached to it. I mean, there is a separate talk we just had at Oshwal Makero, Aparigra. And it's kind of amazing to see, if you were a billionaire, and if you had lots of all these Ferraris and all these cars around, that does not sort of say, oh, Chirag pase possessions. It's kind of the attachment, the under obsession, that is actually the real definition of a parigra. So one could be a billionaire and yet could be totally detached. And a classic example is Bhagwan Rishabhdevna's son, Bharat Maharaja. So he was a Chakravarti. Chakravarti means that he's an emperor of like 6-7 continents, like Napoleon, So but every single day, and if you read the scriptures, when he used to even go on to the war, and his level of detachment was such, in spite of all the wealth, he was not attached to that. Sitting in that Samayak and his level, and eventually he did become a Keval Gnan in that lifetime. But kind of amazing to see, in spite of all this, like Krishna Maharaj had all these many wives, and you can have all these external things around, but that does not just make you feel, it's your internal obsession to things. But yeah, so the idea is that yes, we are leading a life here, but it's just nice to know that the life which they follow is absolutely, it's like a fast track. Like many people do MBA program, it's a fast track to management. Okay? You could literally do years and years and years, but I've done an MBA program, and sadhus and sadhvis, you're literally saying that I'm dedicated my life, I understand what are all these, I understand the concept of sansar, life and death. I really don't want to go through this cycle of time and again. I really want to cut short this, and that's really what motivates them. And I think the whole essence of all these 3 lectures for me is that whilst we might not become that, or we might not even have the sort of possibility of becoming sadhus and sadhus in this life, but even that seed of thought is I think quite important. Okay, yeah, it's admirable there. I wish I could become like one of them. It might not be possible now, but even that seed in itself can, who knows, it can grow sometime. Okay, Jai Jinendra, everyone.